But here's the last thing I would say. The pressure's on Kevin Durant. He's got to be the man. You look at these last couple of championship runs teams have gone on. Steph Curry at 22, Jokic at 23, the Jays up in Boston at 24, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams at 25. These are star-driven performances in the conference finals and finals. Kevin Durant has not been on that stage since he was a Golden State Warrior. So I think the pressure is back on him in a big-time way. Can he still be a finals MVP type player at this stage of his career? Can he still continue to be an impact maker on both sides of the basketball once he gets deep into the playoffs?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sports Night interview. Our topic today is NBA free agency, and joining us today in the conversation is Ben Golliver, who is a national NBA writer for the Washington Post. And there's been a lot of moves that have been made so far, but there's still many more that are to come. Ben, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Great time of year.
Absolutely. Let's first start with the Houston Rockets. They're considered to be the big winners thus far in free agency. I see a lot of people writing about them and talking about them on TV and whatnot. They make the big trade for Kevin Durant. Just give us some of your thoughts on the moves that they've made and how much they've closed the gap now with the Thunder.
Well, look, they hit the fast forward button this summer. There's no way around it. They had Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella. They re-signed all of their most important free agents, guys like Jabari Smith Jr., Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams. It's a classic we're loading up to make a run at it type of summer. And it's amazing for Houston. You go back just 3 or 4 years as a team that's one of the worst teams in the league. They're just stacking draft picks. They're trying to make trades. They're digging out of that James Harden era. And here they are kind of ahead of schedule, I would say, especially with that Kevin Durant move. Look, they had to make some tough decisions. Like they part with a guy like Jalen Green, who was previously a member of their young core. They part with Dylan Brooks, who helped bring a defensive edge to that group. But I think they've upgraded at those spots after these trades. I wouldn't put them on Oklahoma City's level. Oklahoma City is definitely more cohesive. They're deeper, and they're actually younger in some key spots. I think you have to look at Houston's front line between Adams, Capella, and Kevin Durant. That is some real injury risk, right? And so that's something you have to monitor and manage across an 82-game season. But Houston's got the size. They've got the lineup versatility. They've got a great defense. We saw that last year. They've got an improved offense. To me, they're right there with a team like the Denver Nuggets in terms of the major challengers to the Oklahoma City Thunder next season. Rockets fans have to be thrilled because, again, they were one of the worst teams 3 years ago, and now they have a contender falling in their lap. But here's the last thing I would say. The pressure's on Kevin Durant. He's got to be the man. You look at these last couple of championship runs teams have gone on. Steph Curry at 22, Jokic at 23, the Jays up in Boston at 24, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams at 25. These are star-driven performances in the conference finals and finals. Kevin Durant has not been on that stage since he was a Golden State Warrior. So I think the pressure is back on him in a big-time way. Can he still be a finals MVP type player at this stage of his career? Can he still continue to be an impact maker on both sides of the basketball once he gets deep into the playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. Two really good points I made there. One about the health of Durant, and then another one about the pressure that is on him. He has to get it done. He has to show that he can get it done outside of Golden State without Stephen Curry there. So good points there by you. One of the other things I want to ask you about, besides the Rockets, is there another team that you look at who, based on some of the moves that they've made so far, maybe even some of the things they got done in the draft, that you think is another one of the big winners so far?
Well, there's a couple. Atlanta, they steal that pick from New Orleans. They go out and get Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, that's just really good, return for a very young and just, brand new front office, really. So you kind of hit the ground running there. If you're a Hawks fan, you're loving this new regime. You go out and get Porzingis. You get one of the biggest free agent poaches of the summer with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who had a nice postseason for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then you have a first-round pick coming from New Orleans that really could be a top-5 pick next year, depending on how bad the Pelicans are. So they've got to be big winners. The other team, and I kind of hinted at them earlier, I think it's the Denver Nuggets. They
Mhm.
had to trade one of their core players because they just had too many big contracts, right? They had to spread out and get away from four big contracts and just get deeper because they had no bench last year. That was a huge problem for them these last 2 years. Ever since their title run, they turned Michael Porter Jr. into Cam Johnson, who's basically the same player at half the cost. And then they go make really good budget friendly deals, grabbing Tim Hardaway Jr. for a little bit of a shooting pop. And then Bruce Brown, bring him back. He was one of the heroes from their championship run. So they got deeper. I think they got Nikola Jokic some real help. And they also got off their worst contract of Michael Porter Jr. I think it was just a really nice summer, again, for a brand new front office that replaced Calvin Booth. I looked at this summer and I thought, man, maybe Denver should have fired Calvin Booth last summer or 2 summers ago because that guy was sitting on his hands, it felt like, not getting Joker any help. Now Joker's got some real help.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is the strength of the NBA still lies over in the Western Conference. Now, speaking of the Western Conference, I want to talk about a team who's kind of on the other end of the winners. I guess you could call them maybe one of the losers, and that's the Lakers. You've got LeBron, who is aging, right? Still playing effectively. He may be a little bit unhappy right now. You got Luka Doncic, who they're trying to entice to re-sign a long-term deal later this summer. It's kind of a balancing act that the Lakers are dealing with right now. They're trying to win now with LeBron, but also plan for the future. What do you think about what the Lakers have done? They bring in DeAndre Ayton. What do you think about that move and what it does for them?
Well, look, I mean, the LeBron situation is the most fascinating because he
Yeah,
didn't really get the contract that he normally would have wanted. Typically, he comes in the summer and he gets an extension. He gets more guaranteed money. He gets a player option for the future years. They kind of treat him like the king, King
yeah,
James. This summer, they said, no new contract. You can pick up your option. You're going to be an expiring contract this year. You're going to be hitting free agency potentially next summer. And so that brings in all this conversation about, are there going to be trades? Is there going to be rumors, speculation about his fit with Luka? And it kind of makes for an awkward transition period. You look at their free agency, it didn't seem like they were one of the top destinations for guys who were available, right? I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith has played with Luka for years. He's a perfect fit. He walks out the door to go to the Houston Rockets, right?
yeah,
They have to, kind of salvage with Jake LaRavia, a much lesser and less experienced player. So they did get their top priority taken care of by getting DeAndre Ayton. But to me, I don't even know if you really count that as a win. I think all the red flags about his effort, his focus, his consistency, his dedication to the sport, those have been going back years and years and years. I think at this point of his career, he is who he is. And so he's going to put up some double doubles and get some people excited. But will he really contribute to winning? And will he fit with Luka Doncic? He's not this
yeah.
amazing dive guy. He doesn't like contact. He never goes to the free throw line. He just wants to sit and shoot 15-foot jumpers. What's the point of that when you got Luka and LeBron on your team to do the heavy lifting on offense? So I expect it's going to be a pretty dramatic season with the Lakers. I guess personally, after watching LeBron in LA for so many years, it would be great if his career did end here in Los Angeles. It would feel like a fitting way to go out on top. We saw Kobe Bryant have an amazing ending with the Lakers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had a great ending with the Lakers Magic. He kept coming back, but you get what I'm saying. It's a great
Yeah.
franchise to kind of head into retirement with, and they treat those guys right. And I wonder, is that really going to be what LeBron gets, or is this going to go a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, let's stay on that. I mean, is it possible? I know his contract, 52.6 million, I believe, is what the player option is for. I know that makes it difficult to trade. There's not many teams that can take on that salary unless they make some, adjustments to the current salary situation. But is there any chance we could see LeBron play somewhere else? I mean, I read an article today about the possibility of maybe going full circle and ending his career back in Cleveland. What are the chances you see something like that happen later this summer?
Yeah, the Cleveland one is really tough because they would have to give up some major core pieces, not just, set matching salary to kind of get that done. And they had such a good team with an amazing chemistry and identity last year. I don't know if they really want to mess with that. If it's not broken, don't fix it, right?
Yeah,
You have to keep in mind if you just wait 1 year and he's a free agent, now all of a sudden there are more opportunities to add LeBron. So teams, that are potentially interested in him are going to have to ask themselves the question, do we have to do this now or could we potentially do it later? it's very hard to trade the size of that contract. And
Yeah.
it's also hard to trade him because he's got a no trade clause. So he
Mm,
has to pretty much approve. So immediately that's going to narrow the entire field to like what, probably three or four teams that he would actually be interested in, right? So that makes it more difficult. And then you have to, when you look at the best teams, the most desirable markets, or the ones that would have a tie to LeBron, right? So we're
yeah.
thinking the New York Knicks, maybe, or the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like those guys already have their pecking order in place. They don't need a number one option, right? They already have kind of who their guys are. Of
Yeah.
course, it would be great to add LeBron. He's going to sell a million jerseys. You're going to be on national TV every single game. There's
Yeah.
lots of reasons teams want to get in the LeBron business, but in terms of trying to compete for a championship, it's a trickier dance, right? Jalen
Yeah.
Brunson's pretty comfortable there in New York with the whole show built around him. It would be a huge change, of strategy to bring LeBron into that group. So these are the kinds of things that the teams that are interested in LeBron would need to weigh if they wanted to trade for him right now. But like I said, when you're a free agent, everything opens up next summer, right? And even when you're
Yeah.
an expiring contract back in February, things get a little bit easier too. Like if the Lakers got off to a bad start, maybe they'd be more motivated to trade him. You never know. So
Right.
I think these are things that we have to watch. But personally, it's after watching LeBron in LA for so many years, watching him soak in the adulation with all the celebrities courtside and all the glitz and the glamour. I know it's a transition time with Luka and the Lakers, but it's still hard for me to see LeBron anywhere else to start the season.
What about his decision to pick up that player option? We mentioned the number 52.6 million. Um, I know, and I'm never going to sit here and tell another man how to handle his financial situations, but we all know at this point in his career, he's a billionaire. He's got plenty of money. Why not try to rework that deal, make it a little bit more team friendly so that the team could improve the roster around you and try to, chase that ring that, I would think at this point in his career, that's the motivation, not the money. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think LeBron has kind of a philosophy on this where he feels like, look, he's one of the stars, the premier players in the league. He shouldn't be the one who has to take a discount. He's generating far more wealth for the sport than almost anybody else out there. It's like him and Steph Curry and then everybody
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah.
And so
Right.
the idea that he feels like, people ask him to give back. There's been situations in the past where he could have structured his contracts differently and made some sacrifices. And really, the only time he's done that in his career was the first time when he went with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade to the Heatles, and they gave just a small fraction of the money that they could have gotten back to facilitate all those moves. So typically, that's just not how LeBron has operated. He feels
Mhm.
like he wants to, get paid what he deserves. I
Yeah.
think that's his right. Was there a
Yeah.
scenario where, with cap mechanics, if he agrees to take, like a veteran's minimum contract, could they go out there and add a ton of talent? Absolutely. But I just think that's one of those things that's been non-negotiable for him. What's going to be interesting going forward, like if he's a free agent next summer, does he still command a max salary from someone, right? Because again,
Yeah.
the Lakers didn't want to give him that extra year. So what exactly does the market look like? How many teams are going to have cap space to be able to add him, and what number do they want to add him on? Those are open questions, I think, when you're looking at LeBron's future. But it didn't surprise me that he got his money. That's been something for a long time he's felt pretty strongly about.
Yeah, yeah, and hard to argue that. You're not, like I said, I'm not going to tell another man how to do things, but I think back to like the NFL with Tom Brady, he was always known for, taking a little bit less. I know he had a situation with his wife was, maybe the breadwinner in that family, but still, showing that it was more about the team with him and just wanting to win. So,
Well,
and,
don't forget these NBA franchises are going for 6 billion and 10 billion now. LeBron
yeah,
wants to be an owner. He needs every last dollar to
yeah,
accomplish that goal. It's
true,
it's funny
true.
how those things work out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on the Lakers as a team who, getting some criticism. Is there another team that you look at, you think they've fallen a little bit short on what they needed to do so far in free agency?
Well, I wouldn't say they fell short, but they clearly had to deconstruct. That would be the Boston Celtics, right?
Yeah,
Jason Tatum gets injured, and so next year is just a wasted year, a gap year, whatever you want to call it, study abroad year. It feels like, they're all just
yeah,
going to take off and, try to, come back together in 2026, 2027. And so what that meant is they traded Drew Holiday to save a bunch of money. They traded Kristaps Porzingis to save a bunch of money. They lose backup center Luke Cornett to the San Antonio Spurs. Looks like Al Horford could potentially also be on his way out the door. That's a lot of important pieces from that championship run, which was only last year, if you could believe it. Feels like 5 years ago now, but that's how fast the NBA moves.
Yeah.
So I guess they're losers in the sense that a lot of talent went out the door, and really all they have to show for it is that they saved a bunch of money. But I think Brad Stevens is really smart. I think he's taken a half step back to take 2 steps forward down the road. I think he's trying to position his roster and get better flexibility. So when Tatum is healthy and ready to go, he's got a new core with Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, and Derek White, where they can build around those guys and try to reimagine a roster that's younger, that's more athletic, and maybe that's better suited to trying to match up with like the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, no disrespect to some of those older players who I mentioned, but if you fast forward to 27 when the Celtics are going to be back in the mix, and you try to picture Boston versus Oklahoma City in the finals, guys like Drew Holiday and Al Horford are really going to have their work cut out for them at that stage of their career. So even though this is a setback for Boston, I think it was the right thing to do. I think it's the smart thing to do. And I think it's a tough thing to do too, for an ownership group and a front office to know when to say when, to know when to take a step back, to just know when to fold them. And I think that's what Boston did here. I think it was right on the money.
Yeah. Point well taken. I agree with you on that one. We're going to stay in the Eastern Conference for this last question. It sounds like the Knicks are all set to hire their new head coach, Mike Brown, after firing Tom Thibodeau, after leading the Knicks to the Eastern Conference Finals. To me, the hire lacks a little bit of, I don't know, excitement. I mean, Mike Brown's a guy who's been around. He's done some good things in the league. He's also been fired a couple of times. So I just want to get some of your thoughts on the hire of Mike Brown and the pressure that's going to come with the job because of the recent success the Knicks have had and the talent that's on the current roster.
Well, I think first things first, if you decided that you needed to move on from Tom Thibodeau, Mike Brown is one of the most accomplished names who was available. Now,
Yeah.
he hasn't led a championship team himself as the head coach, but he took LeBron and the Cleveland Cavaliers to the finals very early in LeBron's
Yeah.
career. And then he also was an assistant for Golden State throughout their dynasty run. So he's had a lot of experience coaching star level players, and that should help him because the Knicks are a star driven team. I mean, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, that's who makes New York go. And Mike Brown is not going to get in there and have any questions about, well, how am I going to use these guys? I mean, he's been using star players for the last 15, 20 years. So I think that's a big bonus for him. I think number two bonus, New York needs more offensive creativity and they need a little bit more depth in second unit contributions, right? Well, when Mike Brown took over at Sacramento, nobody thought that was a good job. He immediately led them to the number one offense in the league with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. Those are not exactly, household names, top five players. If you put them in a trades, you'd way rather have Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, I think, than De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. So I think from that standpoint, Mike Brown's going to be able to pitch the Knicks ownership on, hey, I've done more with less, right? Like you're giving me this roster that's ready to go. I could turn this into a much more interesting and diverse offense. So I think that part is really exciting. If you're the New York Knicks, and then also people might forget this, but Mike Brown was known as a defensive coach earlier in his career. I mean, that's really what he kind of made his name with. And from that standpoint, New York, they needed to be better defensively. They got exploited at times by the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a chance for him to get back to those roots and try to coach those guys up as much as he can. New York, this conference is theirs for the taking. That's
It
the
is.
exciting part, right?
Yeah.
Like this is absolutely, you got to put them in Cleveland at the top of the heap in the Eastern Conference with Boston injured, with Milwaukee getting rid of Lillard, and with Indiana taking a step back because of Halliburton's injury. Like this is their shot. And I like the fact that they were proactive and aggressive. It didn't feel like the momentum was still in a good place with Thibodeau. I like the idea that they changed coaches. And when you survey the other names out there, I mean, Michael Malone did win a championship, right? He was available. Taylor Jenkins was a good coach down there in Memphis. But I think Mike Brown is going to do a nice job in New York.
Yeah, and apparently they reached out to Dawn Staley as well in the college ranks, but I'm not sure
Well,
how
they reached
serious
out to
that.
everybody. I bet they reached
Yeah.
out to you too, Evan. I mean, I heard they were talking to a lot of people. But I mean, that's what you want. People were
Yeah.
making fun of the Knicks search because they were calling all these coaches and kind of getting quote unquote rejected. Might as well call. It doesn't cost anything, right? And
Yeah.
see who's
True.
available and see, exactly what would make the most sense for your group. I think a thorough coaching search is much better than just taking an assistant and saying, hey, it's your job now. And we've seen that a bunch, actually. Memphis did that. Denver did that. No knock on those specific coaches. But I think if you have a team that's ready to win a championship, you should be talking to a lot of people to kind of hear their visions for how you can get it done.
Yeah. And I did coach high school basketball for 16
See?
years. So if they reached out, I would have taken the call.
Yeah.
But anyways, Ben Golliver, everybody, you can follow him on X at Ben Golliver. Ben, we appreciate you joining us today, and we appreciate all of your great information for us today. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Take care, man.